Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone massively successful, someone who seems to have everything, and wondered, what do they have that I don't? Is it luck? Is it talent? Is it opportunity? Tell you the truth, it's none of those things. The difference between the life you have and the life you dream of comes down to how you think. Because the reality is the top 1% don't have different DNA. They have a different mindset. They see what most people never see. They do what most people never do. They've learned the most powerful truth in the world. When you change your mind, you change your life. Right now, as you sit here, your mind is shaping your future, your income, your relationships, your health, your happiness, all of it. Not your boss, not the economy, not your circumstances, your mind. And the crazy thing, most people never learn to control it. They live on autopilot, reacting, doubting, waiting, and they wonder why life feels stuck. But the top 1%, they've learned to master that inner game. And today I'm going to show you exactly how they think. So you can start thinking, living, and achieving at that same level. Because the moment you take control of your thoughts, you take control of your destiny. So I want you to promise yourself something right now. Stay with me until the end of this talk. Because what I'm about to share isn't just motivation, it's transformation. It's the exact mindset shift that separates the average from the extraordinary, and it has the power to change your life completely. Pause and let the silence build energy. Are you ready? Then let's begin. You know, most people spend their entire life waiting for the perfect moment to start, waiting for motivation to magically show up, waiting for the stars to align, waiting for that feeling of certainty before they take the first step. But the truth is that moment never comes. The people at the top, the 1% who actually create extraordinary results, they've learned that you can't wait to feel ready. You have to move first. That's the difference. The majority think motivation leads to action, but the truth is action leads to motivation. You move, you build momentum, and then that momentum fuels you forward. When you sit around waiting for inspiration, you become a prisoner of your own emotions. But when you act, when you take that uncomfortable first step, you tell your brain, we're doing this. And suddenly everything inside you begins to align with that decision. Think about it. How many times have you felt tired, unmotivated, or lazy, and then you forced yourself to just start? Maybe a workout, maybe a task you've been avoiding. And once you got moving, the energy kicked in. That's not an accident. That's a principle of life. Emotion follows motion. The moment you take action, your physiology changes, your energy rises, and your brain starts to believe that what you're doing matters. The top 1% understand this deeply. They don't wait to feel inspired. They create the state that drives them forward. When they wake up and don't feel like working, they do it anyway. When fear shows up, and believe me, it shows up for everyone. They don't back down. They use it. They turn fear into fuel. They know that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. They've conditioned themselves to act even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain. And that's where the real magic begins. Because when you start taking consistent action, even small steps, brain starts collecting evidence that you're capable, that you follow through, that you can trust yourself. That's how confidence is built. Not through positive thinking, not through wishing, but through execution. You do what you said you would do again and again until that becomes your identity. See, most people live their life backwards. They wait to feel confident before they act. The 1% act first, and that's why they become confident. They understand that you can't think your way into success. You've got to move your way there. And this isn't just about discipline. It's about training your brain to understand who's in charge. Every time you choose action over hesitation, every time you push through that inner resistance, you strengthen that muscle inside you, the one that says, I decide who I am. I decide how I show up. And that identity becomes unshakable. You know, it's fascinating. When you talk to high achievers, athletes, entrepreneurs, creators, they'll tell you the same thing. There are days they don't feel motivated. There are days they question themselves. They've trained their mind to focus on what needs to be done, not on how they feel about it. Feelings are temporary. Habits are permanent. The average person waits for the right mood, the right time, the right environment. The top 1% build habits so strong that they don't depend on the right conditions. They create them. They know that success isn't about doing something once. It's about doing it even when you don't want to. Because when you can master yourself in those moments when it's hardest to act, you've already separated yourself from 99% of people. And here's the thing, you don't have to make massive leaps. The brain loves momentum. Start small, do one thing that moves you forward and do it consistently because small actions repeated over time become unstoppable energy. Every step compounds, every win builds belief. And before you know it, that little spark becomes a fire. It's not the giant moves that change your life. It's the commitment to keep moving when it's not convenient, to pick up the phone, to send the email, to show up to the gym, to work on the dream. Especially when no one's watching, because that's where identity is formed. That's where leaders are built. Every time you choose action, you're voting for the person you want to become. And if you keep voting that way, day after day, eventually that version of you becomes your default. You no longer need to push yourself because you've become the person who naturally follows through. That's the real secret. So the next time you find yourself waiting for motivation, waiting for confidence, waiting for the perfect plan, stop. Take one small action, make one small move, because movement creates clarity. You'll never think your way into your next level, you'll act your way there. You want to change your life. Then stop waiting to feel ready. Start doing and the feeling will follow. You know what truly separates the people who rise to the top from everyone else? It's not intelligence. It's not talent. It's not even resources. It's perspective. It's how they choose to see the world and themselves when things get tough. Because life will test you. You're going to face moments of doubt, of struggle, of pain. The difference between those who stay stuck and those who rise is that the top 1% have trained their minds to focus on possibility, not limitation. Most people live their lives asking the wrong questions. They say, what if I fail? If it doesn't work? What if I'm not ready? And every time they ask those questions, their brain does exactly what it's designed to do. It finds answers. It says, yeah, you might fail. Yeah, maybe you're not ready. And that's when fear wins. That's when hesitation takes over. But the 1%, they flip the question. They ask, what if this works? What if this is the thing that changes everything? If I'm stronger than I think? And just like that, they unlock a different set of answers, a different level of energy, a different life. Your brain is like a search engine. It gives you back what you ask it for. So if you keep feeding it fear, keep showing you reasons to doubt yourself. But if you feed it possibility, it starts showing you paths, ideas, opportunities that were always there, hidden behind your limiting beliefs. The only thing that changes is your focus. Whatever you focus on, you feel. Whatever you feel, you act on. And whatever you act on, you get more of. It's a cycle, one that the top 1% have mastered. They've trained themselves to see challenges as growth, where most people see risk. They see reward. Most people see obstacles. They see training grounds. It's not because they're fearless. It's because they've learned to reinterpret fear. When something goes wrong, they don't say, why me? They say, what's the lesson? That's how they keep moving forward while everyone else gets paralyzed by self-doubt. You see, most people live life like victims of circumstance. The economy is bad. I don't have time. No one supports me. They hand over their power to everything outside themselves. But the top 1%, they take full ownership. They know that if they can't control what happens, they can always control what it means, and that shift, that moment when you take responsibility for your focus, that's when you step into real power. I've seen people with nothing, no connections, no advantages, no plan, build extraordinary lives because they refused to dwell on what they lacked. They focused on what they could do, what they could learn, what they could create. And that mindset turns struggle into strength because life doesn't respond to your complaints. It responds to your vision. And listen, this isn't about ignoring reality or pretending everything's fine. It's about choosing to see what you can do instead of what you can't. You can acknowledge the challenge and still decide to focus on the opportunity within it. That's what the top 1% do. They train their minds like athletes train their bodies. They don't let negative thoughts run the show. They redirect their focus again and again until it becomes automatic. When something breaks down, they ask, how do I make this better? When someone tells them no, they ask, what can I learn from this? When the world says it's impossible, they say, watch me. That's how breakthroughs are born, through a relentless focus on possibility, not limitation. And here's the beautiful part. You can condition your brain to think the same way. Every time you choose possibility over fear, rewiring your mind, you're teaching your nervous system that uncertainty isn't danger. It's opportunity. That discomfort isn't punishment. It's the doorway to growth. Over time, this becomes your default state. You stop reacting like the world's happening to you and you start realizing it's happening for you. Think about a time when something didn't go the way you wanted. Maybe a job fell through. Maybe someone walked out on you. Maybe a door slammed in your face. And now looking back, can you see how that moment shaped you? How it pushed you towards something better, something bigger, something that wouldn't have happened otherwise? That's the power of perspective. Percent don't wait years to see the lesson. They look for it immediately. That's how they grow faster, recover quicker, and move further. Every great achiever, every innovator, every game changer in history has faced failure, rejection, and uncertainty. The only reason they stand out is because they kept asking empowering questions they didn't get stuck in. Why is this happening to me? They asked, how can I use this? How can I turn this around? And that mindset turned breakdowns into breakthroughs. So ask yourself right now, where in your life are you focusing on what's missing instead of what's possible? Where are you letting fear make your decisions? Because the moment you change that focus, everything changes. Your energy shifts, your confidence rises, your creativity ignites. You begin to see solutions that were invisible before. The world doesn't change when you get lucky. Changes when you start thinking differently. When you stop letting limitations define you and start letting possibilities guide you. Because the truth is, the only limits you really have are the ones you've accepted. Change your questions. Change your focus, change your life. You know, everybody says they want to grow. They say they want to be successful, strong, confident, fulfilled. But the truth is, most people don't actually want growth. They want comfort. They want the results without the resistance. They want the progress without the pain. And that's why most people stay exactly where they are. Because real growth doesn't come from what's easy. It comes from what stretches you. It comes from those moments that make you question if you can keep going and then proving to yourself that you can. The top 1% understand this. They've made peace with discomfort. They know that comfort is the silent killer of potential. It feels good in the moment, but it slowly steals your drive, your hunger, your edge. When life gets too easy, you stop growing, you start settling, you start protecting what you have instead of reaching for what you could become. And the moment you do that, future starts shrinking. You see, growth and comfort can't live in the same space. If you're committed to comfort, you're unconsciously rejecting growth. But when you make the decision to prioritize growth, everything changes. Because now every challenge becomes an invitation, every setback becomes feedback, every obstacle becomes an opportunity to expand who you are. Think about it, the moments in your life that shaped you the most, the times you found your strength, your courage, your power, they didn't come from the easy seasons. They came from the ones that tested you. The heartbreak, the failure, the disappointment, the grind that no one saw. Those were the moments that built you. The pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It was life carving out the strength you'd need for your next level. But most people run from that. They hit discomfort and immediately pull back. They quit when it gets hard. They numb themselves with distraction, convincing themselves that they're fine. But fine is the language of settling. Fine means you've stopped stretching, and the top 1%, they refuse to live there. They've conditioned themselves to find power in pain. They understand that on the other side of every difficult decision, there's a version of themselves they've never met before. When they feel resistance, they don't back off. They lean in. They know that resistance is just growth trying to happen. It's your old self fighting to stay in control while your new self is trying to break through. That's why it feels uncomfortable, because transformation always does. You're shedding an identity that can't go with you to the next level. That's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to challenge you. But here's what happens when you embrace it, your capacity expands. What used to scare you becomes normal. What used to overwhelm you becomes manageable. You start operating from a place of strength rather than fear. And suddenly things that used to break you now build you. That's when you know you've grown, not when life gets easier, but when you've become stronger. Look around at the people who've achieved greatness in any area, business, sports, art, leadership. Every single one of them has gone through seasons of pain. They didn't avoid it. They used it. They turned discomfort into discipline, discipline into results. They trained themselves to see struggle not as a signal to stop, but as proof that they're evolving. And it's not just about physical or financial growth. It's emotional, mental, spiritual. Because if you only grow in skill but not in strength, success will feel empty. You've got to expand your capacity to handle uncertainty, pressure, criticism, and fear. You've got to build the kind of resilience that says, no matter what happens, find a way. That's the mindset that separates the average from the unstoppable. There's a law of life that never changes. If you don't challenge yourself, life will challenge you. It will throw discomfort at you whether you want it or not. So you can either choose your discomfort intentionally through discipline, effort, and growth, or you can wait for life to impose it on you through regret, failure, and stagnation. Either way, you're going to feel pain. The question is, it'd be the pain of progress or the pain of staying the same. The top 1% choose their pain. They decide to push themselves daily, not because it's easy, but because it builds character. They run toward the edge of what's possible because they know that's where life truly begins. They've fallen in love with the process of becoming, not just arriving. And that's what gives them power. They don't need conditions to be perfect. They've learned to be powerful in the middle of chaos. When you stop avoiding discomfort, something incredible happens. You start trusting yourself again. You stop being afraid of failing because you've failed and survived before. You realize that fear can't control you anymore. And that realization, that inner strength, it changes how you show up in every area of your life. You become unstoppable, not because life got easier, but because you got better. If you're in a season right now where things feel hard, where it feels like everything is stretching you, good. That means you're growing. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Don't wish it away. Lean in. Because one day you'll look back and realize that this season, the one that felt like it might break you, was actually the one that built you. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens when you're willing to go where most people won't, straight into the discomfort that transforms you. Everything in life begins inside of you. Every success, every breakthrough, every downfall, every limitation, it all starts in the mind. Most people try to change their lives by fixing what's outside. They switch jobs, chase relationships, move cities, buy new things. But nothing really changes until they take control of what's happening inside. Because no matter where you go, you take you with you. The top 1% understand this truth better than anyone else. You can't master your life until you master your inner world. Most people live in reaction mode. Something happens, they immediately let it control their state. A harsh word, a mistake, a rejection, an unexpected challenge. They hand over their peace, their focus, their power to whatever's happening around them. One bad email ruins their day. One comment destroys their confidence. One failure convinces them they're not good enough. But the 1%, they've trained themselves to respond, not react. They decide how they're going to feel before life decides for them. They understand that your emotional state determines your reality. You could have the best strategy in the world, but if your mind is consumed by fear, doubt, or anger, you'll sabotage your own success. On the other hand, you could have nothing, no money, no connections, no plan, but if your mind is strong and your state is elevated, you'll find a way. Because the truth is, it's not the external circumstances that shape your life, it's the meaning you attach to them. Two people can face the same problem. One sees a dead end, the other sees a doorway. The situation is identical, but their state makes all the difference. When you're in a powerful state, you think clearly, you make bold moves, you trust yourself. But when you're in a disempowered state, angry, fearful, uncertain, your vision shrinks. You start seeing obstacles instead of options. So if you want to change your life, you have to start with mastering your emotional state. The top 1% don't wait for good days, they create them. They know how to shift their energy instantly through movement, focus, and meaning. They use their body to change their mind. They change their breathing, their posture, their tone, because they know physiology shapes psychology. You can't stand tall, breathe deeply, move with energy, and still feel powerless. Your body and mind are a feedback loop. Change one, you change the other. But it's not just about physical state, it's about mental focus. Whatever you consistently focus on, you'll feel. Focus on what's missing and you'll feel lack. Focus on what's wrong and you'll feel pain. Focus on what's possible and you'll feel power. The top 1% have mastered the art of directing their focus. They don't ignore problems, they just refuse to dwell on them. They focus on solutions, on vision, on what they can control, because they do. They attract more of that energy into their life. And then there's the third piece, the story. Every single one of us has a story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of. I'm not good enough. I always mess up. I never get a break. That story runs in the background of your mind, shaping every choice you make. The 1% know this, so they change the story. They rewrite it consciously. They tell themselves who they are becoming, not who they've been. And every time they act in alignment with that new story, it gets stronger until it becomes their reality. You see, mastering your inner world isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about taking full ownership of your thoughts, your focus, your emotions. It's about saying, no matter what happens outside of me, I control how I show up. That's power, that's freedom. Most people give their power away 1,000 times a day to traffic, to coworkers, to opinions, to fear. But when you take that power back, you decide that your internal world is yours to command. Everything outside starts to shift in your favor because the world is a mirror. It reflects back the state you're in. If you're angry and frustrated, you attract chaos. If you're calm, confident, and focused, you start noticing opportunities that were invisible before. Your external world becomes a reflection of your internal alignment. That's why the most successful people aren't necessarily the smartest or the luckiest. They're the most emotionally intelligent. They've learned how to center themselves when everything around them is spinning. They've learned how to keep their heart steady in the middle of the storm. And the truth is, anyone can do this. It's not magic, it's muscle. You build it by awareness and repetition. The next time something throws you off, a challenge, disappointment, a delay, pause, don't react, breathe, ask yourself, what else could this mean? How can I use this? That simple pause gives you back control. It interrupts the automatic pattern that keeps you stuck. Over time, those pauses become habits, and those habits become mastery. The top 1% live by one simple truth. Life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by change, and that change begins within. You can't always control the world. You can always control your mind. And when you do, your entire reality begins to shift. Master your inner world and your outer world will follow. Most people live their lives thinking in days, maybe weeks, sometimes months. They want everything right now, the money, the recognition, the transformation. And when it doesn't come fast enough, they start doubting themselves, they quit. They convince themselves it's not meant to be. But the top 1%, they play a completely different game. They think in decades, not days. They're not chasing instant gratification. They're building something that lasts. See, we live in a world that glorifies speed. Everybody's looking for shortcuts, hacks, overnight success stories. But what nobody talks about is the truth. Real success, the kind that fulfills you and sustains you, takes time. It takes patience, consistency, and a relentless long-term vision. Top 1% understand that the results you see today are just the harvest of the seeds you planted years ago. They're obsessed with planting, nurturing, and tending to those seeds, even when it looks like nothing's growing yet. Most people quit in the waiting season because they mistake silence for failure. They think that just because they can't see progress, it means it's not happening. But growth doesn't always make noise. The roots grow before the fruit shows. You have to be willing to keep watering, keep showing up, keep doing the work, even when nobody's clapping, even when no one's watching. That's what separates the 1% from everyone else. They don't measure their life in moments of applause. They measure it in moments of discipline. They think about legacy, not likes. They understand that real fulfillment comes from building something that outlives the excitement of a quick win. Every day, they're making deposits into their skills, their health, their relationships, their mindset. They know that consistency compounds. Small, smart decisions made over time become unstoppable momentum. The truth is, there's a rhythm to life. Everything worthwhile requires seasons. You can't rush a harvest. You can't demand a tree to bear fruit before it's ready. Yet, That's exactly what most people do with their dreams. They plant a seed on Monday and get frustrated by Friday when there's nothing to show for it. But the ones who achieve extraordinary success have learned to respect the process. They trust the timing, but they never stop working. They've developed a long-term mindset, and that gives them emotional endurance. While everyone else burns out chasing quick wins, they're pacing themselves for the marathon. They know that mastery takes years, excellence takes repetition, and that the person who can stay committed the longest, who can stay consistent when the excitement fades, that's the person who wins. Because here's the truth. Discipline is more powerful than motivation. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going when motivation disappears. The top 1% have learned to fall in love with the boring stuff, the repetition, the grind, the habits that most people can't sustain. They've trained themselves to show up even when they don't feel like it, to keep pushing even when progress feels invisible. And because of that, their results look effortless, but they're not. The result of years of unseen effort. You see, when you think in decades, you make better decisions. You stop chasing instant validation and start making moves that your future self will thank you for. You become strategic. You invest in relationships, in health, in learning, not because it pays off today, but because it shapes the person you'll become tomorrow. The 1% understand that time is their greatest asset, and they use it wisely. Impatient with results, but impatient with action. They don't wait around, but they don't force outcomes either. They know that their job is to show up, give their best, and trust that consistency will do the rest. It's a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing that every step forward, no matter how small, is part of something bigger. And yes, there will be setbacks. There will be times when it feels like you're going backwards. The long-term thinkers don't see setbacks as the end. They see them as feedback. They learn, adjust, and keep moving. They know that failure isn't final unless you stop trying. The timeline might shift. The route might change. The destination remains the same. When you think this way, you stop comparing your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20. You stop measuring your worth by temporary results. You realize that every season has a purpose. The season of planning, the season of growing, the season of harvesting. Each one matters. Each one builds you. The world rewards intensity, but life rewards consistency. You don't have to move fast. You just have to keep moving. Every day you stay disciplined. Every day you honor your vision. Every day you show up even when you don't see results. That's when you're building something unstoppable. So ask yourself, are you thinking in moments or are you thinking in legacy? Because when you start thinking long-term, your patience becomes your power. You stop chasing what's next and start building what's lasting. And that shift, that one change in perspective, can transform your entire life. Think long-term. Play the long game, because the ones who win big aren't the ones who rush. They're the ones who build. We live in a world overflowing with information. Everyone's learning something, watching videos, reading books, listening to podcasts, taking courses. People know what to do, but somehow they're still not doing it. The gap between knowing and doing has never been wider, and that's the difference between the top 1% and everyone else. The 1% don't just collect knowledge. They apply it. They turn what they know to action, and that action comes transformation. See, learning feels good. It gives you a sense of progress. You read a book, you highlight the lines, you feel inspired. But unless that inspiration is followed by implementation, it dies the same day it's born. You might get a burst of motivation, but if you don't move, nothing changes. Knowledge by itself is potential power. It only becomes real power when you use it. The top 1% know this, and that's why they learn differently. They don't just absorb information, they look for ways to act on it immediately. Every time they learn something new, they ask, how can I use this today? How can I apply this right now? That's the key. They don't wait for the perfect plan or the perfect moment. They experiment, they test, they take small, consistent actions that turn lessons into results. And through that process, they gain something far more valuable than information. They gain experience, because experience is what builds wisdom, and wisdom is what creates lasting success. The truth is, the world doesn't reward what you know. It rewards what you do with what you know. You can know everything about health and still be out of shape. You can know everything about business and still be broke. You can know everything about relationships and still feel alone, because knowledge without execution changes nothing. It's like buying a gym membership and never going. You have the potential, but not the result. The top 1% have mastered the art of closing the gap between learning and doing. They've built the habit of immediate implementation. When they learn something, they take one small action on it, not tomorrow, not next week, now. That's how they move so fast, how they grow so quickly. It's not because they're smarter, it's because they act while others hesitate. And here's the thing, you don't have to take massive action to see massive change. You just have to take consistent action. You don't need to read 10 books. You need to live one principle fully. You don't need to attend every seminar. You need to apply one lesson completely. The people who transform their lives are the ones who choose depth over quantity. They master what they learn instead of endlessly chasing the next idea. Most people get stuck in what I call the learning loop. They're constantly consuming, constantly preparing, constantly planning, but never executing. They mistake information for transformation. But thinking about change isn't change. Talking about your goals isn't progress. The only thing that creates real movement in your life is doing. And yes, sometimes doing will feel messy. You'll make mistakes. You'll fall short. But that's how growth works. You learn more from taking imperfect action than you ever will from waiting for perfection. The 1% understand this. They'd rather take one bold step forward and learn from it than spend years waiting to feel ready, because they know readiness is an illusion. The more you move, the more ready you become. Action builds clarity. Every step you take gives you feedback. You start learning what works, what needs to change. You can't think your way into that kind of insight. You have to earn it through motion, and that's what keeps the top performers ahead. They're not just students, they're practitioners. They live what they learn. There's another powerful truth they understand. Repetition creates mastery. They don't just try something once and move on. They do it over and over until it becomes automatic. Because mastery isn't about knowing 1,000 things. It's about doing one thing 1,000 times. That's how they turn habits into excellence and excellence into results. If you look at anyone who's achieved greatness, you'll find the same pattern. They didn't just gather information, they executed relentlessly. They failed more times than most people have even tried. And every failure became another layer of wisdom, another step closer to mastery. That's how they separate themselves, through execution. So if you want to transform your life, stop chasing more information. You already know enough to change everything. The question isn't, what do I need to learn next? The question is, what am I doing with what I already know? If you just took consistent action on the top 3 things you already understand, your entire life would look different in a year. You don't need more motivation, you need movement. You don't need more knowledge, you need courage to apply what you know. Because that's where transformation happens, not in learning more, but in doing more with what you've learned. You want to join the top 1%, then stop waiting to know everything. Start applying something. Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power.